Carol, lovely to meet you virtually. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, and congratulations on being part of this really wonderful project. Maybe you could just start by telling us, how did you get involved with The Uncertain Kingdom? What was it about the initial project that made you want to be involved?
Well, as soon as I heard about it, I just thought, I've been thinking about making a film in this country anyway, because most of my films have been, well, the last 3 films have been really abroad, and but I was really aware of just a lot of things happening here and I was starting to feel angry about or wanted to sort of highlight. So when there was this opportunity to make a film here about what was happening, I just sort of jumped at the chance to do it. I just loved the brief, and and I was also on our filmmakers residency up on the northwest in Blackpool, and so I kind of combined the 2 kind of situations here.
And how did you choose this? I mean, it's such a specific location. We're in a very intimate space, getting a glimpse of the lives of these people. Like, how did you choose this particular story that you wanted to put into your short film?
I wanted to make a film about kindness and humanity, because it just felt everything was very harsh last year. There was a lot of sort of people arguing, lots of sort of people against each other, and I really wanted to also highlight kind of what was happening post austerity, all the kind of it felt very much, I was drawn to this food bank, because it felt like it sort of captured both the humanity and the kindness that the volunteers, gave, but also showed actually how people were really challenged daily, just to exist and be able to afford to eat, really.
And, in the process of actually filming this, I guess, how did you go about capturing these sort of very candid moments? People are just going about their day, they're distributing the food, they're having these little conversations, almost like the camera's not there, which I think is a really sort of clever way to have shot it. So did you kind of have to build a bit of trust with these people? How did you kind of enter into that community?
Yeah, so I spent time with both the food banks that I filmed. I did a tiny bit of volunteering, not so much in the food bank, but I was sort of doing lots of washing up because they had a soup kitchen. But Dave, who I filmed anyway, was just a natural, and he never ever seemed aware of me anyway. And I usually find people with such integrity tend to ignore the camera because they're so bothered about what they're doing anyway. They're not interested in kind of showing, highlighting what they do. So I had a very small camera, which also helped. It was just me with the camera. There wasn't a sound recorder or anything. So I was able to sort of, because certainly one of the food banks was tiny, and there were so many people in and out trying to get food. So I had to be kind of very small in a way with my camera.
And how did you react to kind of entering into those spaces, seeing glimpses of the lives of these people? Because, some of it, it's very everyday conversation, chatting about, what people want to eat, are there biscuits available today? But through that, it's actually very, very moving to think about these people that are relying on that and don't have access to those things. And it's a treat if they can have eggs. So did you find that a very kind of moving experience to
Yeah. No, I actually, every time I visited, I got very emotional. It was odd. I remember a couple of times I just thought, I'm just surrounded by food, but why am I getting so emotional? Because I've made films in very challenging places, where there's a lot of poverty. So it wasn't that I was not aware, I hadn't seen sort of stuff like that, but somehow when it's on your doorstep, it felt so bad that we've reached this point where people need, they can't afford a loaf of bread, or be able to eat that day. So it actually had an impact pretty much every day I filmed. I didn't feel like I got used to it, actually. I thought, but yeah, I remember actually shedding a tear a couple of times and feeling quite, oh, this is really having an effect on me. And I wanted, because of that, I wanted to try and film it in a way that I was taking somebody into that space, because we often see a lot of things to do with food banks on news items, and even though we hear the stats, I kind of wanted to kind of get a feeling of the texture of the place, possibly even you get a sense of the smell of the place, through the camera work. So I felt, and still do feel, very sort of humbled and privileged that I was able to go in there and be behind the scenes, because it was really a great insight for me, and it certainly does make me think more about how lucky I am to be able to have the choice of going to a supermarket.
And I think it's really interesting the way you kind of contrast. We hear these kind of like news reports. Is it George Osborne that we hear speaking? Talking about the economy, about the fact that we've bounced back from recession and unemployment's at an all-time low, and then you're sort of putting that up against people having to queue up for a food bank. So what did you want to achieve? How did you pick those quotes, and what did you want to achieve by kind of layering those over each other?
I felt there needs to be a juxtaposition, because what made me first of all want to make the film was I was listening to a lot of news, and it was sort of making me angry, and I was wondering how to juxtaposition it. And in the morning I'd be listening to the news and hearing all this sort of these people talking, and literally sometimes I'd be listening to it as I was just about to do some filming, and it was that sort of marriage that I kind of wanted to do, and I wasn't sure how it was going to work. And it was a sort of tapestry, and the edit was quite interesting because it was getting that balance of these voices that didn't sort of describe too much, but just gave a kind of tone to the film. And I think what I also felt that was, with Dave and some of the volunteers, the compassion they showed in their voices, I wanted a sort of a different sound against that was sort of, we're all fine and we're great, and against it. And we're still having it now, aren't we? I think that we're hearing politicians saying we're doing a great job, and thinking, no, we're not. so actually it still applies now, I think.
I was going to come to the timing, because obviously there was a bit of a delay to the project coming out, and it does feel in one sense that coronavirus has completely usurped any discussion of Brexit. However, in another way, it's also shone a light on lots of those issues that have obviously been bubbling away, in terms of austerity, in terms of the Brexit debate. So do you feel like actually there's a lot of relevance, even though this is kind of more a reaction to Brexit, to right now, and probably in the next 6 months we're going to see even more people put into a situation of deprivation, depending on what does happen with our economy?
Yeah, no, initially when sort of it's amazing how quickly things change, and I did think, oh, this film will be out of date, especially where because people needing food banks have sort of tripled, doubled. I've been looking at some stats, and it's quite shocking how many people now really need to use food banks. But I hope that it feels more relevant now. I really do, because that was the drive in making the film. I wanted to make a film that really felt important now, and that's why, again, going back to the brief of Uncertain Kingdom, it felt like that I wanted to make a film that was really relevant at this moment in time. So yeah, I think hopefully it does remind people that there are people needing food banks, and more will need them.
And how do you see the power of film and culture more generally, perhaps to shine a light in places that, just aren't that visible from the news, when you're listening to the political debate, in the way you've contrasted those two elements, it seems a complete disconnect. And actually, we need films like this in order to kind of get a glimpse of what the reality is. And hopefully, people can take action on the back of that and push for change and donate where they can, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, it's always important to sort of make films where people feel things, because we can read about stuff, but so it is about making people feel things, and sometimes it's not just, and I think film can do that. Can transport. I kind of wanted everyone to be transported to there and see what it was like, and to be there for 15 minutes, and I think, with other stuff that we read, it sometimes it's we can get immune to it, and that I suppose that's the power of film.
Did you have a moment that when you felt was particularly moving or stood out for you, or that you liked the best from the film?
Oh, I don't know if I can. I mean, it's. I suppose it's just Dave. I'm very fond of Dave, the person I focus on, and I think it's just sort of seeing how he gives that attention to detail when he gives some food to someone, giving them what choice within a small amount of choice. So I suppose it's those moments where he interacts with the other people that I like. Yeah.
When you've watched back the rest of the films, how do you see yours fits into the wider anthology, and were you surprised at kind of like the breadth and diversity of them?
Yes. No, I'm very, no, it's great to be part of such a great series of films. Yeah, no, and they're great. They're also varied and relevant. So I think that's also what was such a great experience, was to be part of, not just making, because when you tend to make films, you're on your own, but actually I feel that we're part of a family, and we've all sort of, I think we'll gradually get to know each other more as filmmakers and support each other. So I think that's been also a fantastic experience.
And finally, are you working on any other projects? I know everything's been a bit on pause with COVID, but have you got
any? No, when I was filming the school I filmed, I was so impressed with the teachers and what they did, and I'd love to have an opportunity to make a film where I spend some time there and we have an insight to kind of the work they do, because again, it's very invisible. Generally, I'm interested in stories where they're quiet heroes, and kind of I shine a light to them, the sort of invisible people behind some of the work.
Okay, fantastic. Well, can't wait to see your next piece, and thank you so much for taking the time to share all that with us.
Yeah.
And I hope the rest of your lockdown goes okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.